Hi, welcome to my channel. It's Quilting Nerd, and today I want to continue with the exercises that will help us understanding the texture. And today I want to concentrate mostly on size influence, which means it will, in other terms, it is another variation of density. And for now I will try to use two designs, each for within one 5-inch square that I have here in my patchwork, and I will simply play with the size. I will quilt better part of the square with largely sized design, and the rest in the smaller one, just that we can see the difference, what the size in relation to the size of my patch will make. It is all about also adjusting the size of your quilting for your patchwork and your patchwork design, and so you can also use it simply with purpose as a conscious choice to enhance certain elements of your quilting. So let's start, and the first one would be pebbles, or in this case first we will have large circles or oval shapes, and after that in the smaller part of the patch I will reduce the size. So let's start with that. Pebbles are great for texture, but they can take a while. You need some practice because they demand some traveling. And I'm trying to make as many of them as possible, relatively large, but well enough fitting that I do not have too many spaces empty in between. But I will try to avoid to come back and filling them with tiny ones. I want to have this section quilted with relatively large shapes. No mixing. So sometimes the shapes will be rounder than the others, and sometimes I will adjust the shape to keep it conform with the remaining space. I'm using wool batting. It's extremely fluffy, and that means if I'm quilting such large pebbles, I will have a large section of the batting popping up. Here I have no choice, I have to add some small ones. At certain size, if you will have large quilting, it will serve the purpose of keeping the layers together, so that's the original and the most basic function of quilting. But the pattern and the 3D texture will kind of disappear. That's what you see if you have a quilted on a long arm with a large edge-to-edge pattern. The spacing is so large that the single line, sewn line, kind of disappears. You have a very, very gentle texture. It's almost invisible, and nothing detracts attention from the actual piecing. And that's sometimes what we want to have. But if we want to have extra ductile elements, if we want lots of solids, if we want to enhance the secondary pattern or create secondary pattern in our quilt, then we can play with the more fine aspects of quilting. So let me just add one more here. I filled more than half of my patch with very large stones, pebbles. And now what I will do, I will pull the rest with much smaller ones, and I will keep them consistently small within the remaining part. I could have used a ruler and have a very clean line separating those, but I actually like the more organic approach where the two can blend more naturally. So my pebbles are still not very small, but they are consistently smaller than the rest. And we simply want to be done sometimes, so there are people that love very tiny pebbles. That's not me, definitely, because pebbles simply take time. So what now I am doing is I am creating a huge contrast because I am adjusting the shape. I still have little pops of round shapes and round areas where the batting is popping out very nicely, but they are much smaller. First, I have also the visual aspect of my thread because of the high contrast. This will be less pronounced on the white fabric. But it's also the way how it will be reflecting the light. Changing locally the size of your design is very powerful tool, and it will immediately attract attention. And you can do that with swirls, you can do that with waves. You can do that with lines by keeping them more dense. But you can see this small change in size increased the time I need for quilting significantly. I'm pretty sure I am quilting this area already much longer than the large shapes. But that's obvious because I have to do way more. Pebbles of the small size and the round ones, but and then my traveling way is much longer. I'm pretty sure I could calculate the difference. It is estimated. will go a bit more to the side here so we can see better the dramatic change in the shape and in the texture. And again, I will take now a photo of this, and in the video you will see the difference very clearly. So now let's use another very common element, and that's swirls, and we will again keep the large swirls here outside in the larger area and smaller, denser swirls in the middle. So I am keeping them nice and large, even if the spacing is relatively dense of 1/4 inch. You can see this nice pop of texture in the middle where the density is slightly less, and I try to keep it as fluffy as possible. However, I see already I have certain automatisms here, because despite the fact I'm trying to keep them less dense, I just have them on my default size. And that tells you a lot, that if I do not concentrate, I will reverse to the most often density I am quilting with. So if you are starting something new or you want to change something, then there is a need to concentrate extra. So now we have a nice area quilted with large swirls, and now we can start quilting with some smaller ones. And despite the fact that the thread is harmonizing very nicely and blending with the fabric, you should be able to see the difference in a moment. Let me only maybe adjust the camera a little bit so you see those nice swirls here in the background. They are popping up very nicely. And now let's quilt the dense swirls. So now my line spacing is definitely less. It's probably around 1/8 of an inch. The little pop of less densely fabric in the middle is also much smaller. Also, the thread color, the difference between the white and the light gray, it's much more visible. I didn't change the thread color. It's simply because of the density of the stitches that it's showing much stronger. And that's another information to file for us, that if we have a thread that it's a little bit too strongly contrasting with our fabric, we can reduce the effect by reducing the density. it's real fun here to see now purely the texture without any influence of the color. There is a slight one, but you have to look a little bit closer, and you can see the nice round cinnamon buns and the nice dense swirls. We have immediately big texture difference. So again, I will take a photo and show it to you while this video is running. Another element we can try out for the size, to see the size effect, it's the square spiral. It's another one of my favorites, and it always looks very good, especially when quilted on a darker fabric with contrasting thread. So let's see if we can repeat the same effect like with spirals. So I'm starting in the corner, and I just have to concentrate to keep it relatively largely spaced. But this will come simply with the size. Here it's what I have to pay attention to is like in which direction I'm going and how much space I'm leaving, because for directionally challenged people like me, this can be, yeah, I have to be always very concentrated when I quote this design. I love how it looks like, but sometimes I have a little bit problems because I don't know in which direction I should go. So I take it extra slow and careful. So also what I do here is I try to keep them uniform in size and density, so I will have even bigger contrast when I will start quilting them smaller and more dense. See, here I got a little bit challenged. The spacing is a little bit different. So I will add one more here, a bit larger, to keep this diagonal kinda corner character. And now I will start making them smaller. And they will be not exactly the same in size. There will be a little bit more, they will be less ordered. I can always use echo line to get there where I want. I do not have to quilt the spirals directly next to each other. Now I have a very narrow space here, but with a bit of careful quilting I can navigate. Here probably the difference will be less dramatic, like in case of the pebbles or the swirls, but overall effect is still very interesting. I think I mentioned that already several times. When I make those videos, I am also exploring and learning, and sometimes I am delighted at the result. Sometimes it's a bit less than I expected, but every single video I make, it's a lesson for me as well. You can immediately see that those videos, this pattern is a little bit more challenging for me because I'm talking way less. And we have the third density difference. It's mostly more striking because of the color. And again, the color gets more dominated, the color of the thread gets more dominated because of the enhanced difference. But even if I would use black one, we would have the same effect like we have here. Again, I will make a photo now. And so you can see from a little bit different perspective here how this looks like. So far we were using very well defined geometrical shapes. Now let's talk about some nice and easy lines, and let's take wavy lines. You know, I love wavy lines, and let's see what we will get if we will change the density on them. Again, I'm quilting them on a black one, so mostly we will see the difference related to the contrast of the fabric and the thread, but still it can be interesting to see it here. So I will start with quilting. We are talking here about dense, that means my waviness should be also a little bit denser here. And I will try to echo this now as close as possible, even if it's not exactly the same, just to keep it more interesting. But I want to have a tiny spacing between my wavy lines here. Trying to keep also the amplitude here, so the difference in height between the valley and the peak. With the wavy lines, I assume it will be very difficult to keep the spacing always uniformly dense, but it will add only to the interest here. So I actually like it. Now we can come back, and now let's fill the rest here with waves that are less dramatic, more gentle. They do not have to fit the others that much, because here we have more space, so we have space for variations. Wavy lines are always great to use. They do not have to be dense. There's lots of interest, lots of movement, and we can see the texture. So I already see now that we will have to talk about alternating the density in our design, and also mixing the patchworks with different patterns with different density, just from their character. So that's this one, and the difference is very striking. All of this looks very nicely. The middle one on the diagonal, we have very suppressed volume. We have tons of little visual elements, and then we have this eye-catching texture in each of the corner of our square. So that's all for today. Hopefully see you soon for the next installment. And again, I hope I gave you some ideas and inspiration, and thank you so much for your attention.